Alright, and we're back and we're about to show you how to make the perfect potato au gratin that will not break. But before we get to how exactly we made that happen, I want to talk about this week's giveaway so that you can try these recipes in your kitchen. And we're going to be giving away one bag of the Moo Gloo RM 50 gram as well as a bag of the sodium citrate, which I'm spoiling is the secret ingredient to making the perfect cheese sauce. So in order to win, just leave in the comments below your favorite holiday dish, and maybe something that you would like to see us try to tackle and revamp here on Modernist Pantry. Alright, so Scott, while we're waiting for that other turducken to finish up, I know we talked about, like what's a common problem that people face when they're making holiday dishes, and this definitely come up as something that I run into all the time, which is you make the au gratin and then everything separates and it gets gross and the leftovers are not as good. How do we solve that problem?
So it's pretty simple. It's just like making any other cheese sauce that we make, is we add some sodium citrate. Sodium citrate takes the protein and the fat and it emulsifies them so they melt evenly. And what you're seeing on the top is actually the fat melting out and the protein solidifying in with those potatoes, so you get that fatty layer on top. It's not as appetizing, definitely not as appealing when you look at it, but this completely solves it and you get a nice even coating on top, and as well as if you look at this, the browning on the outside is really perfect. And you can just reheat it the next day and it tastes just as you'd made it today.
So how long ago did we make this one?
So that one's a day. That's 1 day ago I made this. Took it out, completely chilled it overnight, took it out, popped it into the refrigerator. It's going to be the same after 2-3 days. It's not going to degrade or anything because it's just potatoes and cheese. So it's going to work the same whether you make it 2-3 days ahead of time as if you made it 1 day ahead of time.
Yeah, and that's a huge time savings for, I think, when you're running around on a busy schedule to be able to do this kind of work ahead of time.
Peeling and slicing potatoes.
Yeah. All right, let's see, how do we make that cheese sauce?
So it's actually very simple. So we have milk and cream. So we just have our milk here, and we have some cream. We get a nice cream, so it's solidified on top. That's not uncommon. Good. I'm just going to season that up with a little bit of nutmeg, some fresh ground if you can, some nice sea salt, and white pepper. I'm going to hold off on the sodium citrate until I get the cheese in there. So I'm going to melt down the cheese, add the sodium citrate, and then mix it in. So I'm going to turn up my heat here.
And the interesting thing about sodium citrate is that I think when modernist cuisine came out, is one of the first things that a lot of people did when they started doing modern techniques, was that they were like, oh my god, they made this mac and cheese and it had the texture of like, the Velveeta, the stuff out of a can, but you can make it out of high quality cheeses, and people were blown away by it. What exactly is sodium citrate?
So sodium citrate is the sodium salt from citrus fruits, and it's just something that they found that made that emulsification possible. So you can have that protein and fat melt evenly, and thankfully they found it, because we can make some awesome stuff now. And this is something that you wouldn't normally think to make, because when you think about gratin, it's a melted cheese into potatoes. You don't think of making a nice sauce ahead of time that will then make for a better final product.
Right, and do you then end up having to bring the sauce to a boil? Is it a simmer? What's happening here?
Yeah, so you're going to make it just as normal. It's still a sauce that's going to have to be boiled, because you're going to have to melt the cheese. Obviously a hard rolling boil is going to scald the bottom and sometimes ruin the cheese sauce. So if it comes up to a boil, you can knock it down. But I'm going to add my cheese now. You can see some of that butter fat starting to separate already because of the high-end cream that we had. So that all sat at the top. Now it's separating out, but that's totally fine because the sodium citrate is going to emulsify that in as well. We have some Port Salut cheese. It's really salty, slightly soft cheese. It's not completely soft, but it is a nice cheese to use for this because it has a great melting quality, as well as a local cheddar. You can use any cheddar that you want. I definitely like to shred my own for these types of things. That way I know I'm getting like a really nice high quality cheddar.
And if someone is buying pre-shredded cheddar or any other type of cheese, do they have to worry about the cellulose that's typically mixed into those interfering with this process
Not
at all?
with this, no. Not with this. You don't really have to worry about that too much. That sometimes you can have to worry about that with other recipes, but this is really just worrying about the fat. if anything, that might cut down on the stretchiness you get from your sauce, but we're not worried too much about the stretchiness here. So if you wanted to use a pre-shredded cheese, you absolutely could.
Okay.
So the amount of sodium citrate is slightly higher for this because there's a higher water content too. So I want to make sure that adding the sodium citrate holds up and stands up a little bit stronger. So generally it's like a 3% for a cheese sauce.
Okay.
We went like a 4% for this cheese sauce here.
All right.
So just a slightly more, but you're going to get a better emulsification on a thinner sauce.
Okay, so that's really good to know because I'm sure some people already have their favorite recipes and they just want to be able to stabilize that cheese sauce. So start at 3, go up to 4 if you need to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so just going to let this get melted. I'm going to sprinkle this in, and we can see the emulsification kind of happen before our eyes.
Cool.
All right, so we made our cheese sauce here, and as you can see, it's a little bit runnier than you would expect from a cheese sauce, but that is good, right? We're working with potatoes here.
Yep.
Potatoes have a lot of starch, so we don't want it to completely be so bound up that you can't even taste the cheese or feel the cheese sauce here. You can see there's layers of cheese, mixed in with our potatoes. That's exactly what you want. So a thinner cheese sauce works great. You can see as we mix it up, it's nice and emulsified, and you know that emulsification is working. And I'll show you a tip here, is you'll see a skin start to form on the top if you,
okay.
Right? So if I let it cool, yeah, right here, you can definitely see these bubbles are turning into a skin, and that emulsification is happening. That's the same thing you see when a nice cheese melts over a burger or something like that. There's like a really fine skin on it. That's great. It's melting at the same temperature. So we can kind of get into making our gratin now.
Okay.
I'm just going to put a little bit in the bottom. Is that this sauce can be made and kept for a long period of time. So if you wanted to keep this for a week before you make your au gratin, you could absolutely do so.
All right. And do they have to warm it back up before they?
Yeah. So you can warm it back up, but there's such a large amount of like milk in here that it is pretty fluid. You don't have to heat it up too much to do so. You can just pour it right in, kind of out of a spoon. So it's a really nice method that's a little bit easier to do than a traditional one. I put a little down in the bottom, so it gives me a layer on the bottom, so the starch in the potatoes don't stick as much. So, and if you wanted to, you can lay down some parchment paper in the bottom. We actually did that with this one here because it's so deep. It's easier to get it out, and you get a nice clean cut on the bottom.
That's a great tip. I like that. All right, and then once you have this assembled and you pop it into the oven, how long are you cooking it for, at what temp?
So we did about 350, and we covered it for the first about 25 minutes, and then you can increase the temperature once you take the lid off. You can increase the temperature up to about a 375, just get that nice golden skin on top, and go for another 10 minutes. And what I like to do is I like to shut off the oven, just let it sit for a good period of time. Something that's thicker like this, you could go a little bit longer, up 45 minutes.
Okay.
But something that's small like this, you just want to cook the potatoes through. And what we did is we actually shaved these potatoes as thin as we could on a mandolin, so we get as many layers as possible.
Yes.
Really nice, delicate kind of texture. So we'll just show here. You can definitely see that skin forming now. It's a good thing. Just put just a few layers. Thin layer of potatoes, thin layer of sauce, and just keep building, keep building, keep building. All right, our gratin's made. Our roulades are done. All we have to do is sear them. So we want to get a nice golden brown on the outside. If you happen to have a deep fryer at home, you can use that. But if not, you can just sear right in a pan as you normally would a steak or a chicken breast or anything like that. So here we have our rendered turkey fat, duck fat, chicken fat. So we're going to put that directly in. You'll hear a few splatters because we render in water.
Okay.
But this flavor is going to be added directly to the chicken itself, or the turducken. It's not just chicken.
Yeah.
The turducken itself. You can, if you're here, you can smell this immediately when we start heating that up.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to sear it off.
Okay. And then if someone made this the day before and now they're ready to sear, what temperature do you recommend they bring that up to? I like to take it directly out of the bath, dry it, and then sear it, and you don't have to heat it up at all, right? So if you're going to be cooking this for a
like a family meal, you can have your immersion circulator bath going, pop it in an hour, it's heated up through, and then you just sear it off and it's ready to go. So you don't have to heat it and temp it or take anything like that. It's already heated through to the perfect temperature. Just needs a sear and a slice.
Great.
So let's get that. And I like to dry it off. You know, it's wrapped up, so there's a lot of moisture on the outside, and the less moisture makes for the best contact on a sear. So we put that directly down. So let's get this seared up, and then we can slice it, and we'll see what it looks like on the inside.
Perfect. Cool.
All right, this is all seared up. Basted it in duck fat, turkey fat, chicken fat, a little bit of thyme.
It smells amazing in here right now.
It should. So great. We have this. It's cooked perfectly all the way through.
Okay.
So
and
basically
unlike
what
a
we do-
traditional roast, you don't have to rest this
Don't
at
have
all?
to rest
Okay.
it. Nope. It's already pretty much done its resting because it never gets up to too high of a temperature. Very high temperature, you have to let those temperatures regulate and redistribute any moisture. This is just set at a temperature. It's the beauty of cooking with an immersion circulator.
Awesome.
So I'm going to take this and we're just going to slice it down because the outside is hot. I'm going to use some tongs. Remember, this is tied, so you'll have to get the strings off. But let's just take a look on the inside of that, right?
Ooh.
Our duck is beautiful. It's just about medium. Chicken, turkey, completely done. And we're going to get a slice and taste it with our wonderful gravy.
It looks awesome. So while you're slicing, so the gravy is actually a recipe that we did for a holiday episode, maybe last year or the year before that. Can you talk a little bit about the gravy and what makes it special and what people can do with this gravy?
So it's a really simple gravy, and you don't have to add any roux, flour, and butter, so you're not going to get any of those flavors. If you wanted to emulsify a little bit of butter into it, you absolutely could, but we found it's really delicious on its own. You make a nice, flavorful stock. You add a little bit of Ultra Spurs 3, which is a thickener, which has no flavor, so you're really just getting the straight-up flavor of the turkey, duck, chicken bones that you used to make this. And if you roast them nicely, you can get a beautiful color on it.
Yes.
And Janie, if you wanted to try,
Yeah.
it is all you.
And what I love about all of today's recipes, including the gravy, is that these are all make-ahead recipes.
Yes.
So you can, not run around like a chicken with your head cut off on the day.
Turducken with your head cut off.
All right. So you can kind of see how the meat glue is keeping it all together.
Yes, yeah, exactly, right? So this is tied, but once you slice it, you're still getting those perfect portions. Everything is cooked through. Everything is perfect to eat.
It's super good.
Good.
Yeah, this is so good. Like, it's hard to describe because you're getting all these different meat textures. It's super nice. I think while we were, doing the prep work for stuff, we were talking about what we would make for the holidays, and I think we might all take a little bit from today's menu and make them for the people that we love. So if you want to try these recipes, remember they are all in the links in the description below. Enter to win the giveaway so you can give it a shot too. And until next week, from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie Wang.
And I'm Scott Guerin.